This week's news that Facebook made more than $1 billion in profit, and yet will nonetheless get a $429 million tax refund, comes at about as teachable a political moment as possible, with President Obama using his State of the Union address to demand what he called comprehensive tax reform. The news about Mark Zuckerberg's company forces us to ponder what that term tax reform really refers to, and whether it refers to something far more sinister than meets the eye. That's a distinct possibility worth pondering, since only a year ago, President Obama, in his previous State of the Union, defined, quote, comprehensive tax reform as specifically ending the situation whereby, quote, companies that choose to stay in America get hit with one of the highest tax rates in the world. But that kind of language sounds like a lobbyist's misleading talking points, the kind designed to further reduce corporate taxes in what is already one of the lowest tax countries in the industrialized world. The details of the Facebook tax break reveal that bigger story. As the nonpartisan Citizen for Tax Justice this week showed, the company used a gaping tax loophole that lets companies pay their executives in stock options, and then, when those options are exercised, take a huge deduction. The New York Times summed up the net effect, saying that the loophole, quote, deprives the federal government of tens of billions of dollars in revenue over the next decade. Thanks to this and other such subsidies, deductions, write-offs, and loopholes, the United States has become something of a paradox. We simultaneously have a comparatively high official corporate tax rate and yet a very low effective corporate tax rate. How low is that effective corporate tax rate? Well, the best way to answer that is to look at corporate tax receipts relative to the whole economy, which is exactly what the Bush administration did back in 2007. That year, the Republican-run Treasury Department issued a report showing that the United States corporate tax receipts were the third lowest in the industrialized world when compared to GDP. By 2009, the same data showed we slipped to second lowest in the industrialized world, with only debt-riddled Iceland below us. This difference between the official 35% tax rate and the far lower effective tax rate explains why we periodically see news reports about most major corporations paying little or no corporate taxes at all, and in many cases getting a tax refund financed by the taxes the rest of us pay. In all, as the Wall Street Journal reported last year, American companies are now paying an effective rate of just 12%. That's not one of the highest tax rates in the world, as the president alleges. It's one of the lowest in the industrialized world, and according to the Wall Street Journal, one of the lowest rates America has had in at least 4 decades of its own history. Considering these facts, it would seem that the very first step in any tax reform proposal should be to leave America's existing corporate tax rate alone, or even raise it, and simply close the kind of loopholes that let the Facebooks of the world pay nothing. That way, our effective corporate tax rate might both match the average of our global economic competitors and generate more public revenue to help reduce the deficit. Instead, though, the politics of tax reform are reversed, as both President Obama and most Republicans in Congress continue to insist that before any discussion of closing tax loopholes commences, a tax reform proposal must first and foremost include a major reduction of the official corporate tax rate. Put another way, while closing revenue-draining loopholes remains negotiable in Washington, lowering the overall tax rate has become a non-negotiable point of bipartisan agreement. This is the power of money in politics. There's a well-organized, well-funded army of lobbyists whose corporate clients have a vested interest in both preserving existing loopholes and in reducing the official tax rate from its already low level. At the same time, there's no similarly organized or strongly financed opposition to such a crusade. That's because those who have a vested interest in such an opposition are precisely the groups that are not well organized and that possess comparatively little political power. In other words, this is a fight between corporate America and middle America, and Washington today answers to the former, not the latter, when left to its own devices. But that's where the Facebook news comes in. When a story comes along about a universally recognized brand, it can penetrate public consciousness in a profound way. That it's coming right around the time that the Obama administration is intensifying its effort to lower the already low corporate tax rate makes it particularly inconvenient for Washington. Suddenly, the president's call for a lower corporate tax rate, a call that a year ago may have seemed politically advantageous or popular, that call could quickly become politically toxic, as Americans wonder why corporations like Facebook should pay even less than they're already paying. Suddenly, in short, questions about all the wrong-headed assumptions baked into the corporate tax debate might be raised, and that could ultimately change the outcome.